Welcome to the Hustle or Bust podcast powered by Paverart. Our mission is simple: to dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, small business, and all the success, struggle, and challenges that need to be confronted in the pursuit of growth. We celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit, but perhaps most important, we want you to learn at least one idea that you can put into action immediately to make your investment in time worthwhile.
A goal is a dream with a deadline. A famous quote from Napoleon Hill. Welcome to episode 47 of the Hustle or Bust podcast. We dive deep into the world of goal setting. It's a challenging topic, and we approach it like we normally do, with war stories and a basic academic model. Making goal setting part of the culture within a small business growth environment is really challenging, and we talk about some ways that we approach it and we struggle with it. We hope you enjoy and drop us a line with some feedback.
But just want to talk a little bit today about how important goal setting is and some of the results, some of the positive results that come about as part of the whole goal setting process. I was thinking about this on the way in. One of the things, when I first started my sales career, if you want to call it that, one of the things the sales manager that hired me stressed very strongly was that, look, I don't want you walking into an account without them expecting you. No cold calls out on the road. Wasteful, very inefficient, and your probability of success is very low because, you want somebody to be there expecting you to be there, looking forward to you being there. So what I would do, again, being a rookie at this, I figured, well, okay, how about if I spend a day just prepping my trip or my trips? And that's what I did. I would come in on a Monday because, as we've learned in sales, nobody wants to see you on Monday and nobody wants to see you on Friday. They want to see you on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, if they want to see you at all. So I just get on the phone, and my goal that day was to make 60 phone calls. And I figured after doing this for a while, I settled on 60 because I know if I made that many calls, because that's where your cold calling occurs, if I made that many calls, I could set up a week's worth of calls, on average 3 or 4 sales calls per day, per area that I was going to be in. And it worked. That was my first experience with goal setting, and it was a very positive one. And
how did you determine 60 was the number?
Well, I had to do it a few times, but the idea was
that was your hit rate.
Yeah, that was my hit rate.
Number.
If I made 60 phone calls, I know I was going to be able to set up, at least for the rest of that week, from Tuesday to Friday. I was going to be able to get 20 good, solid, appointed calls in, 5 per day for 4 days. And also that time was spent because I was going to be, in many cases, out of my area. I wasn't going to be able to come back home that week or any of the days that week. I set up where I was going to stay. I had an idea of, the whole food thing. Look, you're running a business. It's what I came to realize, and what I eventually told the guys that when I became VP of sales, I would tell the guys, look, you're running your own little business here. And in order to do that, you've got a goal set every week, and you got to get yourself set up. Don't come to the end of the day not have a place knowing where you're going to eat, where you're going to be sleeping. You'll get, your territory better than anybody else. But this all comes about as a result of goal setting. So it was an eye-opening experience, and it was my first experience with goal setting and all the positive things that come from that. How about you? I mean, because you were in sales, you've been in sales all your life. Mm-hmm. Sales and marketing has been your thing. Where did you get your first taste of the whole goal setting arena? Where did that come from for you? And where did you first learn that, hey, this shit works. This really does work.
I think when my early days working started to give me a little bit of a framework on goal setting. In high school, I had the greatest job as a high schooler can have, running a liquor store or working at a liquor store and then being kind of an assistant manager, closing at night. I didn't know it at the time, but I was setting some goals that, wouldn't it be cool if I had keys to the shop, literal, where I can close, they would trust me to close and or open the shop. So I wouldn't say I had a goal that said I want to have keys to the shop, but I want it to be regarded in that light of being a trusted person, being an employee as part of this liquor store. So
Sure.
That was probably the first professional setting. Mm-hmm. I think I had the makings of habits that were pretty disciplined fairly early on. And I tell people, I've advised people that we work with, that I've worked with in previous lives, to have personal financial discipline. And how I did that wasn't necessarily goal setting, but it was good habits. So I'll give you an example. From an early on, probably 22, 23, I had some financial discipline where I had a date with myself every single week. And that date was simple. It was a personal spreadsheet of everything that I owned. So my checking account, my savings account. If I had a car, I had my car listed. And then every week I would update those accounts. So if I had a part-time job and I was making, pick a number, $75 a week, I'd go make my deposit, and I'd spend a little bit. And then every single week, every Saturday morning, cup of coffee, 9 a.m., I would go update those numbers. So you can imagine doing something the same way every single week for 2 decades. That develops a kind of a rigor or a discipline on how you live your life, at least in one area of your life called financial management.
Sure.
So I start to see numbers that went up, my behavior that drove it. If I work more hours, lo and behold, you see the number go up a little bit because I had more money coming into the account. If I went on a spending spree on vacation, those numbers would dip. And then I got cause and effect because it was giving me real-time feedback in my face. So it wasn't necessarily goal setting that I want to be a $100,000 net worth by the time I'm 30 or whatever the goal was, but it was developing a habit that was disciplined where I saw my own behavior impact the number. In this case, it was my own personal financial net worth. So that all developed a discipline, not necessarily goal setting, but habits that were productive for me.
Yeah, but it was homework.
Right.
Okay. That homework and that fact gathering process is what you have to have in place in order to be able to set a series of what will eventually be successful goals met. Mm-hmm. And I get that. You really have to know what you're shooting for before you could even start shooting for it and planning to shoot for it. And that's what the plan is what the goal is all about, and goal setting is all about, at least in my mind. So I get that. I absolutely get that. One of the things that when you first became part of the team, purchased the business, and genuinely became part of the team here at Paverart, you opened up a whole new arena for me in regards to blogs. And I said, okay, I was on a plane one time. I said, you know what? I'm writing my first blog. And my first blog was about I called it, the series of and thens that you run through every day. Okay, you get this job, and then this job, and then this job, and then you do this job. One of the things I mentioned in that blog was the fact that, one of my great all-time mentors, my dad, one of the first things I remember him telling me is, any big job that you have to do is a series of little jobs. And that whole series of little jobs leading up to the big job is a series of small goal-setting sessions, okay? But if you complete that and you go through all those little jobs and you get that big job done, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. And one of the byproducts of that I call affirmation. What was seemingly impossible when you first looked at it, or at least overwhelmingly daunting, is actually achievable. And once you go through that process one time, and then you go through it a second time, and then you go through it a third time. That's what becomes part of your process. That's what becomes part of your life when, whether it's business or whether it's personal, you start to realize that, you know what, I can do this. And the confidence that you gain from that affirmation, that goal-setting affirmation, that breaking down of the big job into little jobs and successfully completing all those little jobs and realizing, you know what, I got this big sucker out of the way. All right, let's move on. What's the next one? That to me is just really eye-opening, and it becomes a series of personal goals then that you want to set. So at least from an affirmation standpoint, the confidence that you get is really, really, really important. And then as you get older, you start passing that information on to the younger guys that are working for you or working with you. And to see them go through that and to see them understand what that's all about and to see them start gaining the confidence and then become self-starters in regards to that goal-setting plan and all that. That gets to be a real life-affirming thing too. So affirmation to me is that was the what was seemingly impossible or overwhelmingly daunting all of a sudden became something that was well within your grasp to accomplish. And we see that every day here at Paverart.
Well, the academic framework for sound goal setting, the best thing that I found is what's the acronym? The SMART goal setting. So SMART, it's specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic. You got to be able to achieve it.
Right.
And the most important part of the SMART framework is T, time-bound. When are you going to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to set forward, your goal?
Exactly.
The one thing that comes to my mind as when I bought Paverart, we were having the personnel challenges. We were recruiting. We had one employee that we just couldn't turn the corner on and get them to a positive frame of mind from a performance standpoint.
Right.
And then you asked $1 million question, and every now and then, sometimes it's just a simple question that spurs the right action, which was, you probably remember it, do we want to be here 6 months from now having the same exact conversation? And it was so simple, but it was like the answer was, hell no, we don't. Right?
Yeah.
All right, so what are we going to do now so that 6 months from now, let's just say this conversation happened in January, so that June looks a whole hell of a lot different? What do we have to rewind, change our own behavior, and then set some targets, right, so that when June comes along, we're having a completely different conversation? What does that look like?
Great point.
So you almost advance the conversation. All right, it's January. By December, what do you expect your year to look like? Mm-hmm. For it to be a success, what are your financials? And that might be the least important of it, but paint a picture sometime out in the future, and a year is usually where you go, and say, what does it look like? What are the financial metrics? What are the people metrics? What are you trying to achieve? And then back yourself up and figure out the behavior that you need to change to make that future state happen. I've always been a believer of, the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again will get you the same results.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So goal setting is about changing, setting a target with a time orientation against it that says, what am I going to change to get a different result down the road?
I remember that day very distinctly. And I count on those kinds of days from a growth standpoint, a personal growth standpoint. And you're right. It was an eye-opening meeting that we had.
So why did it take us so long? This was probably over a year into maybe a year? Mm-hmm. Into my ownership, maybe 8 months. Why did it take us so long to do something obvious?
I've actually thought about that, and because we haven't acted like that since.
And I was a party to the whole thing, so it's not like me, this great hustler or bust dude, right? Change agent, brilliance in my own mind, business owner, and we're waiting. The grass is growing under my feet, and it wasn't until you asked that question that I got spurred to act with you.
Well, I guess.
So why does that happen?
Well, to answer that question, I have to ask myself, why did I ask the question? Well, I know why I asked the question, because I was tired of being where we were. Okay, and I guess at some point you get so tired of being where you are,
Sick and tired of being sick and tired.
sick and tired of being sick and tired, that sometimes that's the motivation that spurs you on to the next level. And it was just a simple question, but both of us, I think, realized that, you know what, neither one of us wants to be here in 6
But
months.
I got to tell you, I've come back to that question, and I'm like, fuck, what if Bull never asked that question? Would I still be, and you would think something would have kicked me in the ass, but I ask myself that all the time. If Bull never asked that question, where would we be?
Well, okay, maybe that
Now, that's
might,
extreme.
that might have
But
been
if
a
I'm asking
benchmark.
myself that question, sometimes it's simple that you need something to jog you out of your stasis, so to speak.
Well, and we had not at that point. Look, let's remember, you came into this business for all intents and purposes a virgin. You knew very little about concrete pavers, the basis from which we create the product that we create. And I think to your credit, and I've said this to you a couple of times, at least a couple of times, you took the time to learn the business. Okay. Nobody else does what we do to the extent that we do it. There's guys that dabble in it, but nobody takes it as seriously and build a business out of what we do. And you had to learn that. It would be as if I got into the food business. I don't know squat about the food business, but I'd have to take a certain specific period of time to learn the background and kind of break into the club. Well, you took the time, and to your credit, it meant all the difference in the world. After a year of this nonsense with this particular employee and the employees in general, you get to a point, you get to a breaking point, and you say, "This is enough. We need to move on here. We need to fix this before we can get to the next level here." And thank goodness we did, and thank goodness that day came up. But that's the reason. I think it took a while before you could have the confidence in making decisions that would lead the company and spur the company on to the next level. But you had to know the company first. You had to know what we're doing and how we're doing it. And you did that. You got your hands dirty.
Well, there's a little side note on that, and thank you for those thoughts. But when you buy a business, for people out there aspiring to buy a business,
Sure.
assume control of a business. I believe, and everyone's got a different opinion. There's no right or wrong answer, but there's a parallel. What is it? The Hippocratic Oath as a doctor: do no harm.
Right.
In my mind, as a new business owner, there should be a Hippocratic Oath that you don't do any harm. So pick a time window. It could be 90 days, 100 days, 6 months, where you're not making radical change in the business. You got to learn the business. Now, a lot of people don't have that luxury because they buy businesses with a lot of debt, right? I didn't buy this business with any debt. I wrote a check. So that's a little bit of a luxury I had to have a little bit of runway to take my time to learn the business, to do all those things. Having said that, time is not your friend in the change world, but you do have to respect the culture. Presumably, when you buy a business, you love what that business stands for and what it's all about. So respect it enough to get to learn it, to learn the people in it, and don't start making wholesale changes right away. Figure out when the right time is. So some of that, why did it take so long? Part of it was I was intentionally going at a controlled pace to learn the business, to learn the culture, to have them learn me, so that there was a trust level there.
And you're gathering information
Right.
as you go along. I mean, it's the right way to do that. Now, just like any goal-setting process, in order to ensure or do the best you can to ensure that those goals that you're setting and the plans that you're putting together to back that goal setting up are going to be successful, you got to know what the hell you're doing. You got to know what you're talking about. If you're going into this blindly, I mean, I am not going to build a rocket that's going to go to the moon, okay, tomorrow. I can't do that. I'd have to spend years learning what goes into that and plan around it and set my goal. But my goal's set. I'm going to the moon and I'm building a rocket to do so. Okay, how do we put that together? How are we going to achieve that goal? And taking the time to learn the business. look, you paid a lot of money for this business. And patience, being one who's not very patient, I understand how difficult it is to kind of rein in your feelings and your emotions, and you're like, why is Mike doing this? Why is Brian doing that? I don't get this. And you ask questions. That's how you learned. And you learned what we were doing wrong, and you also learned what we were doing right. And at some point, when it came to the employees, we were doing a lot of stuff wrong. And it just, that ship has been righted.
I think there's a lot of small businesses that fail to set change-oriented goals.
Right.
There could be fear involved, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
What's the downside of setting a goal that really changes the mix in the HR area, the marketing area, the operations area, whatever the area is? Fear governs a lot of the lack of goal setting that breaks you through to a new level. So the classic one is growth. How do you grow 30%, 40%, or 50%? It's not going to happen by just wishing it to happen and setting a goal that says, all right, pick a number. We're $2 million in revenue today. How do we get to $2.75 million? Mm-hmm. That's my goal. If that's all you do is write it down on paper and then you pray that it happens, guess what you're going to do? You're going to do about $2 million. There's got to be a series of steps that do it, that support that growth. And it might not happen within a year, but you just can't set a goal, write it on paper, and then go hope it happens. I mean, there's a process that is involved.
Right.
And a lot of this comes down to pure problem solving. All right, so if you're a restaurant, what does your traffic have to go up? Do you have to go from sitting 150 covers a night to 250? Does your average price point have to go up 30%? What does that look like? For our business, it's about inbound traffic to our website. Very rarely are we going to sell something without people kind of spending some time on our website. Would you agree?
100%.
All right, so if we want to grow, if our traffic was 1,000 visitors a month, how do you get it to 8,000 visitors? And if we got it to 8,000 or 10,000 or 12, what happens to our bottom line or our revenue? So you got to have a feel for visitors into the restaurant or into our Paverart website. What does that result in terms of inquiries? How many just bounce off and never come to us again? And then what's the close rate? What's the average transaction price? There's a formula involved, and that goes down to knowledge of the business. But the first step is, when you're setting a goal, is, all right, the goal is one thing. Now, how do you get there? What are the concrete steps you got to take to actually make that thing happen? Employees are kind of easy. Do we want to be here 6 months from now having the same old, tired, frustrating conversation on the employee? If that answer is no, then what are you going to do about it? Do you just fire them right now? Do you put them on a work improvement program? Do you start interviewing? There's like 30 things you can do right now to address it, and you can't do all of them. You might be able to do one or two of them. So what are those two things, and how are you going to thoughtfully proceed down that course? And that's really where the rubber meets the road, is how do you do that? How do you accomplish it?
Well, what's interesting to me about this whole process of goal setting is that, this whole affirmation situation that I was talking about here previously, that's great for me, and that's great for you. We both went through this, but the idea is you've got to pass that on. I want to pass it on to my kids. You want to do the same with yours. But when you want to run a successful organization, every individual has to have that very same type of goal-setting mentality. Mm-hmm. And it's one thing to set up the template, make it easy for them to do so, but once the meeting's over and they're out on the floor and they're manufacturing what they're manufacturing, and then there's a problem with one of the machines. Okay, what's our goal for this? Our goal for this is to get this machine fixed as quickly as possible. There's all sorts of mini goals that go on all day long. It's the add-then process. But they need to learn that. You can goal set, just like you said. You can goal set all day long. I want to be able to bench press 225 pounds 10 times. Okay, that's great. Well, I'm not going to go into the gym tonight and do that if my maximum bench press right now is 100 pounds. It's going to take the better part of 2 years to get to 225. Okay. Well, how do we do that? Let's set the goal. We've set the goal. Now we make the plan. We make the plan. You got to do the plan. That's the handoff. All these little mini goals that the employees have to go through every day, they've got to be able to plan. They've got to be able to plan for getting to those goals. Whatever those mini goals are, they've got to be able to learn how to plan for that. You just can't. Like you said, it's not going to happen magically.
Let me give you let me ask a question. My classic question: what percentage of the world, the workforce, beyond go down to the worker level, the non-owner, non-general manager level? What percentage of the workforce sets goals?
I think a very small percentage. I'm going to say I'm going to say less than 50%. But here's why. Management, for the most part, doesn't trust them to make those goals or to set those goals. And more importantly, they don't trust them to make the plans that are necessary to get to those goals. Again, this is not I'm not saying that management in general in this country sucks in that respect. There's a lot of companies, big companies, medium and small, that understand the importance of this day to day.
But you think it's less than half?
I think it's less than half.
Okay, I'd agree with you. And I might even go so far as to say 25% or less.
Okay.
Of the employee level will set goals as it relates to the business and probably even their
why?
personal life.
Why do you think that?
It's hard. It's not easy.
Oh, it's hard.
It requires change. If this was easy, everybody would do it. I think it's going to resemble the bell curve that I've probably talked about in every single podcast, that if you got 15 to 20% of the world, the far right end of the bell curve that is truly exceptional, those are your goal setters.
Right.
Those are the ones that push the envelope.
Yeah, but don't you think 100% of those that are involved, I don't care what it is, business, I don't care what it doesn't matter to me, need to be involved with the goal setting process.
Yeah, they'd be well, absolutely. Look, if the world looked like at a company, let's say it's a company of 50 employees, if you can inspire the entire company to start setting goals that help themselves personally and help the organization, you're starting to win. You're going to start to win. It's just a matter of time, right? But generally, a lot of people don't do that. Doing something that let's take the average person. They're probably in $10,000 of credit card debt. They've got life challenges. They might have 2 kids. They might be struggling with childcare. They could have a whole host of college debt. Who knows what it is? They've got a host of challenges that they're fighting with. It's a slog to get through the day. And I can assure you, the ones that set the goals and start putting discipline in place are going to have a hell of a lot more less stress getting through it than the ones that don't. Now, easy for me to say, I got student loans, I've got credit card bills coming out of my ass, I'm working 2 jobs to make ends meet, and now you're telling me to go set goals, right? So, I think it's common sense that the ones that set goals are going to start to move through at a pace that's quicker than the ones that don't. Otherwise, you might be going through 20 years of hell, sloshing your way through the thing.
And you think that's the difficulty
in
learning that process. It's hard. It's hard when you're trying to just get through the damn day and get everything done that you're supposed to get. Well, whether you know it or not, what you're doing that day comes as a result of either bad planning and goal setting or good planning and goal setting. But you did some kind of goal setting in your mind, whether you think about it or not, you did. I'm saying we need to more formalize it. But what you're saying is the reason for this, the reason why more people don't do it, is because it is hard to do.
It's hard. It requires the setting a goal is the easy part. It's the changing of the behavior is the hard part, right? Mm-hmm. My experience is only the exceptional, or it's highly skewed towards the exceptional performers have a goal setting mentality. That's my experience in managing people for, a couple decades, right?
Sure.
And those people, by the way, they find a way to get into your office. They find a way to get you off site. They're saying, I'm making X number of dollars now personally, and I want to get to significantly higher than that. Is there a way we can do that together? Or not? If not, tell me. Now, that's pretty ballsy, isn't it?
It is ballsy, yeah.
So,
very ballsy.
The ones that don't do that, they probably aspire to that too, or wish there was something better than or not, but they never go have the conversation. Now, why don't they have the conversation? Is that conversation going to go easy?
No.
So they don't have the conversation.
No, it's not going to go easy.
Because, hey, I'd love for you to make 50% more. Let's talk about what you're doing now. And you're not just going to get it, hand it over like candy. You're going to get it because you're more productive. Look, newsflash, people get paid more because they generate more.
Correct.
It's an economic equation that every employee, whether you're a secretary, a mailroom, or a VP of sales and marketing, they're worth some multiple of what they're contributing to the business, or some fraction, I should say. You generate $1 million, you might be worth $100,000, or you might be worth a couple $100,000. So there's a formula. Every business looks different. But if you want to go have that conversation with the boss, you better be prepared to show what you're going to drive to the bottom line. If your behavior remains the same, then all they're doing is charity or trying to keep you. The conversation's not going to go as well as to say, here's what I see as the problems in this business, right? I can't solve all of them, but I think I can make one hell of a difference in these three areas. If I'm successful at that, I think here's the bottom line, as best I can tell, being a subject matter expert in this area. I think it might be worth a couple $100,000 to you. So what's that worth to me personally if I help you get there? Number one, do you care if we get there in that area, or do you have other things in mind? Now all of a sudden your boss or the owner of the company is a partner in this. How many people are having that conversation in a small business?
I would imagine very few.
Right. So, but that's the goal. When I'm talking about goal setting, I'm talking about things that transform the business and the person. That's what I think of as goals. Otherwise, it's kind of like a to-do list. I got to make these 4 calls today, or I got to call these 3 vendors and these customers. I got to follow up on this. There's a separation of the whirlwind, which is in a small business, really any business. You got all these things going on in the whirlwind that you need to do successfully to keep the lights on. If you can't return your emails, you're going to have problems keeping the lights on. Goal setting kind of pulls you out of the whirlwind, and those are the bigger goals that transform you and get you to that next level. They're harder.
It's kind of brings me, that was a nice segue because it brings me to my next point. Personal growth. The realizing that I'm a better person now than I was before because of the whole planning and goal setting process. And that kind of personal growth is the kind of thing that makes you realize that, you know what, not only do I belong here, but I'm an important cog in the wheel. I'm important to this organization because I do this process. I go through this process. And I've proven that time and time and time again. That personal growth is one of the byproducts of going through the goal setting and planning process, I think. And it just makes you feel better about yourself. And if you feel better about yourself, it's, the aura that creates around you is infectious, and it makes you a better person. Period. End of story.
There's a quote or a cliche, and that has a lot of truth to it, is the most important part about having a goal is having a goal. It just set a goal, right? And that kind of spurs you to, in every organization I've worked with, there's a tension when it comes to goal setting.
Right.
You want the plant to do something. You want them to set goals. They're going to give you 5 reasons why that's not realistic, and you don't really understand all the shit that happens in my world. The machines can break down. The employee doesn't show up. They start giving you all the things that they think you don't understand, but you really do.
Sure.
Of why that process of setting a goal, it ain't really going to work. You really can't calculate it because they start telling you 35 things about the intricacies of their job. When you get all that, and you still come back to, all right, so do you not want to set a goal and not want to move past this hurdle?
There's the moment, right there. There's the moment. That's the hurdle that I think a lot of small businesses have to go through. You don't know what I have to. You're trying to tell me that I should be setting a goal to do this, 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 and this. You have no idea how, and let's get back to the word hard, how hard that's going to be because this is going to happen, that's going to happen. It's happened in the past. It's going to happen in the future. The whole idea of goal setting and planning is to see those issues and make sure they don't happen. Set the goal. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. What's the plan to make sure that doesn't happen? Well, that might mean we have to hire another person. That might mean we have to go outside and find someone who can help us with this particular problem, with this particular machine. Don't put up the negative wall, okay? Putting up the negative wall tells me you don't want a goal set and you don't want a plan.
Right.
And that's not going to work.
Let's say I'm semi-accurate on my assumption.
And by the way, but before you go on, by the way, I'm guilty of that too, okay? I mean, I'll sit in a meeting and I'll hear myself say that, and I'm like, okay, asshole. Okay, the very thing that you're saying that you shouldn't do, you're doing. You have to create almost a positive frame of mind here. There's ways to fix this. We just need to find them. That's all.
If my assumption is the bell curve that left to its own devices without ownership, leadership, intervention,
Right.
15 to 20%, the high achievers are going to naturally want to set their own goals and get
Correct.
better, right? If we take that as fact or directionally factual, the question is, what if you mandate goal setting within the organization? I'll give you another bias. I do believe people want to do a good job inherently. Nobody wants to not do a good job, whatever good job is defined as.
Right.
So if you mandate a goal-setting mentality, setting daily targets, having a team get together, figure out what success looks like, and then if they fall short, have the team the next day get together, and there's kind of a cadence of accountability. I'm borrowing some terminology from The 4 Disciplines of Execution, a book that was written really dry, but a lot of good concepts like this whirlwind, setting leading indicators. So this cadence of accountability, think of it like a pickup basketball game.
Mm-hmm.
Teams that keep score, we're going to play till 10, and you got to win by 2. If you're watching it as a bystander, that game's going to be more exciting to watch than the game on the other side of the court where they're not keeping score. There's going to be more intensity. Everyone's going to know what's in. They're going to know who's winning, who's not winning. Businesses are really the same way. You want to get a cadence of accountability, and that starts with goal setting. So if you just do that, get the team involved in setting a daily goal and then talking about it if they hit it or not the next day, your productivity is going to go up double digits, 15 to 20%, just by that first step. And you don't even have to be successful hitting it. You just get the team communicating on the same. If my assumption is right and my experience is right, that everyone generally wants to do a good job, everyone kind of wants to know what the score is. If you leave them to their own devices and there is no goal setting, guess what they're going to do? They're going to plod through the day thinking they're doing a good job, and they're going to underperform. Not because they're bad people, because there's no target to hit.
Exactly.
So something that in our world is something that takes 5 days to get off the floor might take 7 days. If your standard is X, whatever your throughput measures are, should be off the floor in 5 days, it's going to be 7 days, it's going to be 8 days. They're going to be doing other things. They're going to be thinking they're doing the right thing, but there's going to be no targets. So just by having a goal and people getting together and communicating it, your productivity, your results are going to improve. But you got to get there where everybody embraces it. Otherwise, they're just going to pocket veto it, and then you created a different set of issues. So you got to know when the right time is to introduce these things.
I couldn't agree more. Look, if we're trying to sell this idea, goal setting and planning,
You got to be ready for it. You just don't jump into it.
that's true. But once you're successful, and you will be successful, just keep at it. The sense of accomplishment that you feel, your self-esteem and self-worth goes up measurably. I mean, you realize, I can do this. I can be successful on this team. My what I'm bringing to the table is important, and I can do this. Well, what you have to do, the part that you have to learn is you can't just do it once. You got to do it over and over and over and over again. But once you get into the habit of doing it, it becomes part of your mental being. You can't. It's almost like you can't not plan. It's a double negative for a reason. But your sense of accomplishment, the feeling that I'm vital to the team, I'm important. I'm something better now than what I was before. That is so important. That is so important. It's one of the byproducts of what you're talking about. But again, where the 15 to 20% on the right side of the bell curve kind of discover this on their own, this comes about for them as a natural progression of who they are and what they want to become. The other 80% can learn it. They can certainly learn it and incorporate this into their daily life. And it's just, I don't know. The aha moment for me, going back to what I originally mentioned, how I got started down this road with goal setting and planning, was when I realized that every call I went to, somebody was expecting me to show up. Okay? I put the plan in place. The goal was, based on my sales manager at the time, you never walk into somebody's front door unless they're expecting you to be there. Okay? Make sure it's an appointed call. After 2 or 3 weeks of this, you realize this is easy. I can my week is already planned. I don't have to worry. When I'm done that Monday and I go home that Monday, I know Tuesday through Friday, and then maybe even the following Monday through Friday, because I may have planned for 2 weeks. This is great. Then you can concentrate on those inherent traits that you have, your knowledge of the product, your conversational style. You can concentrate on all those other things that will make you a better salesperson. I'm talking about sales here. It doesn't matter whether it's sales, operations, finance, whatever it is. It's that kind of personal growth which is self-affirming and very, very positive and just terrific for you and your career. And if we're going to try and sell folks on this, that's one of the byproducts that you're never going to you're never going to downplay. It's really, really important.
Well, sales is the most logical for a goal setting. Your pipeline and the quality of your connections, the relationships and the discussions that you're having, that all add up to quotes or whatever the measurable impact. Sales is easy to measure. It's all the stuff prior to sales. How many meetings, how many proposals, how many quotes.
Right.
That the strength of that and what stage of the quote process are you in that results into some quantifiable number called revenue. Sales is extremely easy to understand the quality of that salesperson's efforts based on what they can show you on their pipeline and their daily call sheet and all their activity that should generate a number called revenue.
Right.
The hard part is everybody that's not in sales. So it's the operations people, it's the finance people, it's even the marketing people, less measurable, right? You can generate activity or leads for the salespeople, but once you start getting into the non-sales and marketing functions, things become harder. So what are they going to do to prove their value as it relates to setting goals and growing a business? Again, if your business doesn't have growth aspirations, less need to set goals, although then you become into the survival mode. So I would argue, even for businesses that don't want to grow double digits,
Right.
This is an important process. Economy gets tight and tough, and unemployment goes from 3.8 to 5.8%. And if 15% or 80% of the world is not setting goals, who's more secure in their job? The person that's taking a hard look at their own performance, their own business, their purview of control, and saying, I think I can do better here. I think we can do better. Let me go have some conversations with my manager. They're going to be a hell of a lot more secure, don't you think, than the people that aren't even looking at their jobs?
Exactly. You're bringing up an excellent...
And again, 92% of the world does not own a business.
Yeah.
So this conversation applies to everyone that doesn't own a business.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do in your personal job to improve? And what's the benefit for the business? And what conversations are you having? Because you can't do it in a vacuum. You can't just go magically set a goal, then at the end of the year hope it happens, and then go talk about it after the fact.
And let's face it.
Get it done up front and have partners in it.
Exactly. Well, you know what? And what's important too there is you've got to have a manager or a boss
That has a
or an
clue.
owner that has a clue.
That's right.
Okay. And can recognize that and see that coming from an employee. Can you have a successful organization where everyone, and I mean everyone, down to the newest guy, the apprentice even, is not goal setting and planning? Can you have a successful organization that way?
You probably can. I can't think of any examples, but I'm sure there's exceptions to every rule. What we're talking about is culture. Do you have a culture where performance and results matter? Where in a continuum of the company goals, what's expected as being part of the Paverart team or the restaurant or the other menu, whatever the business is, it's up to the top leadership of the company to determine what their culture is about. Mm-hmm. And then from there, everything kind of falls through. So if growth is important or customer service, whatever those things are, that's got to be part of the culture. So some of this self-selects itself out. This is the Paverart way. This is how we do things. This is what's rewarded, and this is what's not rewarded, right? So you got to have that culture that kind of supports all of this. And that's where the owner really has to come in and say, this is what we're going to be about, this is where we're going, and then this is how I plan to get there, and here's everyone's role within that, to set that broad, strategic, kind of the course that you're going down. And then from there, the goal setting starts.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, because when you look at the entire organization, sales, administration, operations, depending on what organization we're talking about, there might be one or two, added sections to that. But typically it's going to be sales, operations, and administration. And at any one time, any one of those sections in your business can be leading the charge on goal setting and planning, depending on what it is that you're talking about. You brought up the idea. It's you cannot be a successful salesperson, or you can't have a successful sales organization in a business without goal setting and planning every day, every day. And the one thing when I first got into sales, I came out of operations. The one thing that I really enjoyed about the way that particular business was run was the way all three of those areas, all three of those departments, again, sales, administration, and operations, how they met and worked together, and how in this, one particular meeting might be about, okay, operations has a problem manufacturing this particular product, and should we consider dropping it out of the line? Then sales chimes in. Then all of a sudden, by the end of the meeting, the president of the company or the group of managers that are handling those areas are getting together and they're thinking, okay, we need to fix this problem. How are we going to do this? That whole process to me was fascinating. And by the way, none of this happens without people. I mean, you can set up templates and plug. It's what they said about Bill Belichick. It doesn't matter who's the quarterback, okay? Because the process is what's going to lead the company. Bullshit. Okay.
And players matter.
Players matter a hell of a lot. But in this particular case, I don't care how low you are on the management rung. You can contribute, all right, into that goal setting and planning process. But I love the interfacing between all the departments and what eventually came out from that, okay, and how problems got solved. They just didn't sit on the table. We moved forward. There's usually one or two people that would be responsible for doing that, but they were the catalysts that got everybody else into the process.
Right.
And that's why I asked the question, can you have a successful organization if you don't have everybody on the same page? If everybody isn't goal setting and planning, is that weak link or weak links going, or those weak links going to bring that organization down and not put it in a very positive position?
I'll make it more visceral. Maybe this could be a takeaway for business owners. You don't have a successful organization without a whiteboard. And I'm oversimplifying it. So what do I mean by the whiteboard? A visible, here's the goal for the day, and then a visible scorecard of what success looks like, right? So it's got to be these three designs get off the floor. It's got to be every single customer is happy going out the door, and here's how we know that. It's got to be we're turning the tables, X, whatever is important to the business. It's got to be visible for all employees to see, that everybody agrees with, and that you're measuring it. A visible scorecard. I would say the organizations I've been in, our own example, we got a whiteboard. What's on the whiteboard? We got some to-do things that we got to buy. We got some cue pictures, but there's no goal that everyone's looking at. And there might be conversations, but the next level is get everybody on the goal, visibly where you and I can walk in, everybody sees it. And by the way, that works for sales too. There should be a whiteboard of these are the things we got to close this week. We had that sporadically. So it's not like we're coming at it from we're doing this in perfection.
Right.
This is a work in process, right? So, but a visible scoreboard where everybody can kind of see it, and you're having that cadence of accountability, conversations, people are getting together daily. Hey, Bull, did we close these 3 deals or not?
Right.
If not, what are we doing to get them to? Are they going to the back burner and then other things are replacing it? On the operations, what does that look like? So a whiteboard, visible scoreboard of what the goal is and how close are we to achieving it and where everyone's kind of seeing it, that's pretty important. And most organizations don't have that visibility. It's kind of shared in there. This is where we kind of had that conversation where we look at it. Got to be visible. It's got to be a scoreboard.
Okay, now we're getting into what I think is a very interesting area, and I call it critique without criticism, okay? And a lot of people just don't have the intestinal fortitude to sit in a meeting and say something that could potentially, because they don't know if it will or it won't, but upset somebody on the other side of the table, okay? And when I say critique without criticism, you can do that. Look, we didn't hit our goal. Let's understand why we didn't hit our goal. Okay. Now we're not saying that this person didn't do his job and that person didn't do their job, because I can tell you from personal experience in this business and previous businesses that I've been a part of, there's always a reason why something didn't get done. Okay? The idea here is you have to understand that it has to get done. And if you can't get it done, maybe it's because you didn't plan to get it done. Maybe you didn't buy into the goal to get it done. Critique without criticism means, look, Mark, with all due respect, we didn't hit our number last month. How many calls did you make? How many follow-up calls did you make, weeks 1 and 2? Well, I couldn't. I was sick. I was out with COVID. Okay, I understand that. Well, then that responsibility falls on me. Okay, Mike, did you kind of pull up the slack? The questions start to come out. Feelings can get hurt, but they're not supposed to get hurt. That's not what that's there for. We're not there to blame people. We're there to fix whatever it is that we have to fix. And that goal setting, and again, the shoe could be on the other foot, and sometimes it is. But you have to understand that in order for the organization to move forward, we have to fix those problems. Here's the goal we set. We didn't hit it. And by the way, not hitting a goal, that's deflating. That can be very, very deflating. But what's not deflating is understanding why. Understand why. And don't let it happen again. Let's move forward. Let's find ways to make sure it doesn't happen again. I think there's people out there, there's folks out there, there's employees out there that they get intimidated when they think they're being called on the carpet. You're not being called on the carpet.
It's not personal.
All we're trying to do is fix this.
Right.
That's all it is. Don't let that be the hurdle that you have to get over, to realize that I can make this work. You and I can speak about that. We can talk about the positive end of this until we're blue in the face, because it's what we do. We've done it pretty much all of our professional lives, and we're really comfortable in that arena. I don't. I'm just pretty much like everybody else. If I don't want to be criticized, okay, or hear the implication of a criticism when I'm being critiqued, that's on me. That's not on the manager or the guy that I'm working for. That's on me. I have to understand that. Okay, I do understand that. That's not going to happen again, because I'm setting the goal that it's not going to happen again. Here's how I'm going to accomplish that. I think you get a lot of that. It was my concern when we started having the end of month team meetings to review that month. And did we hit the targets? Did we hit the goals that we were going for? Not every month you're going to hit your goals. Well, I shouldn't say that. Every month you should be hitting your goals, but every once in a while you're not going to hit your goal. Okay. That doesn't mean that the tenor of the meeting should be negative. It should be objective. It should be very objective. Okay, let's understand why, and then let's move forward. Now, every once in a while, it may fall on the shoulders of somebody that didn't do their job, okay, for whatever reason, and they're given the opportunity to fix that. You do it enough times, you're not going to be given the opportunity to fix that anymore. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to find somebody that will do it the right way more consistently than you did. But we don't have that here. I really don't think we have that here. We have, it's...
No, well, we have, we're probably very common in the fact that we've got a goal, an expectation of performance
Right.
every month. And let's just say that number is, pick a number, $300,000 a month, let's just say,
Right.
hypothetically. Mm-hmm. And then we go through the month, we work our ass off, and then we come together at the end of the month and we say, how did we do? Well, we did 310. Great. We did 350. Great. Generally, that number, we've been exceeding that number up until the point when we don't. Last month, we missed it. And now we're like, all right, what the hell happened? And we're trying to recreate the history. So what we were very common. We're like level 1. We've got a goal. We come together and we see, did we hit the goal? And we talk about it if we didn't.
Right.
But more often than not, we're hitting a goal. at least for the past year and a half, let's say. All right. What we don't have is that's our level of accountability. Where's the plan to get to that number? Let's just say it's 300 grand. That Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then all 20 production days lead up to that number. And if we hit our plan that we built out day by day, we should end up with 330, right? There should be no surprise. And by day 5, we should know if we're on pace to hit that or not. We don't have that. So we show up at the end of 4 weeks or 5 weeks, and we say, all right, we missed it. And then we try and recreate it. That is like level 1. We got to be at level 5. Now, the question you got to ask yourself as a business owner, does everyone have the knowledge how to break that down? Do you know what orders are on the books? If that answer is yes, okay. You got the data. Now, is it just a matter of breaking it down by day? And that's kind of where we are. We've sold enough to have the $300,000 goal. What we don't have is the daily thing and somebody overseeing. Does it add up to 300, 400, or 200?
Right.
And are they talking about it daily? Yes or no? If it's no, then what do we got to do to talk about it daily? What do we got to do to get that plan? So that's where we're at. So we're at like base level. We believe in goal setting. We're doing some basic things, but we don't have that plan to say, here's how we hit the goal, and we don't talk about it every single day.
And the worst
That's
thing,
our evolution.
Exactly. And the worst thing, I think one of the worst things that can happen for you is that you have a great month. Okay? You have a great month. And
So we're relying on data. So we've seen us hit that goal 12 months, so we know it's possible. We've already performed at that.
Right.
So why do we have to do the daily thing? Why is the extra effort? Why, we get all the reasons why. Do we really need to
Well,
go to that level of detail? We're doing pretty damn well here.
To guard
Up until the
against
point-
the
Then tell me why you
170
missed it.
Well, to guard against the $175,000 month.
That's
That's why
right.
you do that plan. And again, I think the worst thing that can happen to you is that you have 1, 2, or a string of really good months where you've hit
Right.
your number, and you know what? You hit your number
By accident.
by accident.
Right. So here,
And
look, we're 20 years old.
so all you
new
keep
owner for
doing
5
is
years.
reinforcing,
So we just started our team meetings in May.
Right.
Right?
Exactly,
20-year-old
yeah.
business, just started our team performance meetings in May, which is goals, performance against goals, and what are the pressing things we got to solve.
Yep.
Right? But we don't have that daily planning process. So our evolution to get to what we're talking about relative to goal setting, we're at like on a scale of 0 to 100, we're like halfway there. We
Right.
got a goal, we come together, we measure it, but it's not really visible, and there's no daily plan breaking it down where everybody's aligned with it. We're kind of doing it in pieces. Maybe we're a little bit beyond 50. Maybe we're at 65-ish, right? So we got a long way to go to close that gap. Now, what's the payoff as a business owner to get to that point where there's a daily plan, the communication? The payoff is really in infinity. It's how big is your market. Then it becomes, all right, if you can produce to that goal level, know what levers, where your productivity gaps are, what your machine problems are, all those things that happen as a result, then it's a matter of how much can you go sell once you have that going down. And I would say the opportunity is almost infinite. It really is a function then of how good are you on the sales side if your operations can perform that. First level is sell enough where they can go build a plant for a month. They got enough orders to go fill it if you're in a manufacturing world.
Right.
If they've got that, then it's, all right, let's see the quality of their decision making, their planning, their communication, how they troubleshoot. Then it's up to the sales to go take that 300 in that example up to 800,000 or whatever it is. So we're like 55 to 60% the way there on what we got to do. We just started goal setting and team performance meetings in May. And generally, we've been killing it on our numbers. But you're right. The worst thing that you can do is have great numbers in the absence of all these things. Because it's like, why bother to change?
It's
Because you don't know what your potential is the answer.
Yeah, and it's again, what we're trying to do with this pod is to make sure people understand that you have to do this process. You can't sit on your hands and hope by happenstance you're going to be a successful company. Rare's the occasion that occurs. You know, how many successful products out there have been, the idea of this particular product is just so you can't help but be successful.
Here's what I would
yes,
tell you.
you can help but be successful.
I've worked at Kraft Foods, which at the time in the early 90s was the country's largest food company. Then I went to Sara Lee. I worked for a sales and marketing services company. I went from a startup that went from $6 million to $330 million. Then I owned my own business that was a smaller business, and now Paverart. None of those companies got it right top to bottom. Probably the closest was Kraft Foods, the most successful. Yeah, they had a planning process. It all started at the salesperson. It rolled its way up. Marketing had conversation. That was a pretty well-oiled sales and operations planning process.
Right.
And then it went less defined as I went smaller in the company. So the more common businesses are like Paverart that are just trying to get their act together and try and get more stable, more solidified, and get everybody on this page. The opportunity, though, for small business to get this goal setting process right and get it all the way throughout the organization is enormous. And I would say the overwhelming majority don't have it even started.
Yeah.
We've got it started, but we got so long to go to get it all infiltrated throughout the organization.
Well, sure, and it's people driven, and each one of those individuals has to understand the importance of the whole goal setting and planning process, and incorporate that into their daily jobs.
Yeah, you don't just show up one day and say we're going to start goal setting and have everybody on board.
No.
It's not going to happen. This is
well, as you mentioned before, it's hard.
There's EOS,
hard.
there's entrepreneurial operating systems that go into organizations that meant to formalize it and structure it, and there's probably some merit there. I have found that the flavor of the month, the operating system approach, is harder to get done wholesale. I mean, there's probably a case I could be short-sighted there, but to me it happens in bits and pieces. You introduce a concept, nail down that concept. All right, you get that done, like us. We started with goal setting and bringing people together every month and then talking about performance quantitatively. Now you got to layer in the next few phases that get you to the next level.
Sure.
There's probably a quicker way to get there, but this is just my experience. This is an area that generally most people don't do well up and down the organization, but you got to start and refine it as you go.
I have a short story to tell that kind of outlines the pitfalls of what we're talking about in regards to not doing the goal setting and planning. Part of goal setting and planning is gathering information. You have to have data, okay? And when I was in a previous organization, I was VP of Sales and Marketing, and it became the goal of those guys in the C-suite that what we were going to do is we're going after high turnover, very, very large original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, that were involved with conveyors and conveyor belting. Before that, we were going after more high profit, smaller organizations, going through distribution. We were going directly to the end users, the board plants, things like that. Without getting into the whole this whole idea here, or without getting into the trivia behind all this, our goal was to, in a 2-year period of time, increase sales by about $2 million bucks. And you got to remember, this was a small business, but $2 million was huge for us.
Sure.
Well, we got there. Okay, we had the talent to get there. We had the materials to get there. But what didn't we have? We realized that we were going to have to sacrifice margin to get volume. But what we didn't do was we didn't figure out what that volume needed to be in order to make that margin sacrifice. We kind of did it, but the gentleman who was in charge at the time said, no, this is the business we're going after. Okay, we're going to increase volume. Well, what does that mean? You've got to increase your manufacturing capability. And what does that mean? More people. So trained personnel had to go up. More equipment, more space. I mean, you can go through all of this stuff.
So the profit went down, you think?
Well, boy, did the profit go down.
So was it the right goal?
We hit the goal. The goal was the wrong goal.
Whose fault is that?
Oh,
was it the person that in sales that hit the goal? It was the owner's fault, or whoever was in charge of setting the goal.
That's exactly correct.
Sales did their job.
Yep.
Right?
We got you where you wanted to be. Oh, no, wait a minute. Well, you should have charged more. Well, we can't charge more. We're not going to get to that sales goal by charging what we were charging before.
Was there not enough collaboration to begin with on the goal, or
not enough collaboration?
On the front end?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. It was blind goal setting.
Look, there's a bell curve of owners too, is there not?
Yeah, there's no question about that.
So owners sometimes set stupid goals that don't pay off in the bottom line.
Correct.
That don't take into consideration all the factors that you're talking about. There's a bell curve of owners.
But guess what happened?
But they are the owners, so it's their prerogative to set a bad goal.
But guess what? That's exactly right. Well, but guess what happened? Just in line with what you just said. What happened was we had to retrench. We had to rethink the process. By the way, all the while, we still have all these orders coming in at these lower margin prices. We've got to, okay, what are we going to do? We basically broke even and almost doubled sales in the organization in 2 years, but we're breaking even, no profit. Okay, this is not good. This is not a good thing. Okay, because at the end of the year, you've got employees looking for their bonus checks.
They hit their goal, and there's no money for bonus.
And there's no money for bonus. Now, can you think of anything that's more debilitating than that?
Nope.
No, neither could I.
There's a bell curve of owners.
Yeah, exactly right. The sales guys, we're flying high.
Production produced it, right?
Oh my God!
Or they couldn't sell it.
That was a happy end of the year sales meeting. We hit the number. We did exactly what
Yeah,
we
but
were
there's no
supposed
profit
to
to pay anybody.
Well, and I'll never forget when I stood up in front of these guys. I said, "Yeah, you hit your number, but guess what? That number was anybody can sell their product at a lower price. Now we've got to relearn how to sell this product either
money
to the same people at a higher price, or we change markets."
Look, sales
what I used to call sharp right. You got to take a sharp right. All right, we're going to take a sharp right, and you guys aren't going to be happy because you've established all these relationships. The planning process was flawed. The goal setting the goal was correct, but the planning to get there was flawed.
There wasn't enough. There could be a number of different reasons, but I've seen a lot of organizations where there's not enough trust in the salespeople. The salespeople know they were selling things too cheap.
Right.
Do they know what their cost of goods are? Many salespeople don't even know what it costs to manufacture something. They just want to sell it for as cheap as possible to generate the most revenue. Well, shame on the management and leadership of the company for not bringing the salespeople into a profitability mindset.
Exactly.
They're smart enough to go do it. You've got to trust them. You got to share information, and then you got to trust them to do it, and you got to have controls around it, or they will go sell. They will be.
They got to buy in.
They got to buy in.
It's easier to buy in.
But it is demoralizing to hit a number and then say, "Yeah, but we didn't make any money." Well, who the fuck's problem is that?
Yeah, exactly. And that's, let me tell you something. It's a learning experience. It's the learning experience of all learning experiences. Well, I did what you told me to do.
That's right.
What? Oh my goodness. Well, there was a flaw. Now we have to go through the goal setting and planning process to figure out where the hell the flaw was and how we're going to fix it. Okay. And again, I just started using the term, all right, boys, it's time for a sharp right.
Right.
And that's what we did. And now sales dropped the following year, but we were much, much more profitable. Okay. Everybody started to realize, oh, okay, now I see how this works. That's right. What the way this works is everybody here, the 40 people on the production line, okay, the 10 outside sales guys, the president of the company, the vice president of the company, all the vice presidents in the departments that are running the business are all on the same page. And guess what? It wasn't flawed after that, and they've been successful ever since. And but it was a very shocking. I'll tell you that's when goal setting and planning that smacks you in the face if it's not done honestly and smartly on the front end.
Yeah, what I think people, the masses, the 92% of the people that don't own a business, to get better at this personally, what I always recommend to people is start with your own personal financials. And I know this sounds like I'm talking about money all the time, but money is great because you can count it, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's objective. You either have $100 in the bank or you got nothing, and you either had $10,000 of credit card debt or you have none. You either own a hotel.
It's a tangible cost-benefit
You
analysis.
can measure your net worth, whether your net worth is negative or whether it's worth $5 million or $10 million, and everywhere in between. You can measure it, and then if you've got credit card debt or student loan debt or mortgages, you can project out. Ask yourself a simple question: where am I going to be a year from now? Mm-hmm. And is there a way I can affect the score? More income, less expenses, budgetary management, and then get into a disciplined process of understanding it. If you've got $10,000 of credit card debt and you ask yourself a simple question, when's this going to go down to zero and I'm not paying 28% interest on it? You should know that answer, what it is, but most people don't. All right. So you got to kind of go through that process get your own house in order, and money is a great way to do it on credit card debt, on your personal net worth. And let's say you have no debt. Okay, now you've got investments. You got $10,000 in a trading account. You got whatever, $30,000 in an IRA. Then you can start thinking about retirement and what you're investing in the market and what that all looks like. But at the very visceral level is know where you're at today from a net worth standpoint, an accounting of all your assets, all your credit card bills, all your mortgages, and then see, can you go through an exercise to see 12 months from now or even 30 days from now where you're going to be? Are you moving the needle? And it's amazing how many people don't know that. I think the majority of people don't know it.
Would you say then that...
But it is visceral because it's your own life.
Would you say then that you've got to get your own house in order before you would be expected to understand how to do the very same in your job?
Right. You do.
Okay, then that
it's a muscle. This is a
ru-
skill. Goal setting is a skill.
Right.
And there's ways you can get better at any skill. Smart objective, right? Specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, time-bound. All right, you can get that, and you can start applying it to your job. But start practicing on your own situation, and that's one example. Now, weight loss is a classic one.
Right.
I want to go from 200 pounds to 180 by the end of the year, and then that's a whole different... Everyone struggles with that, right? Or a lot of people do. Financials is where you got to start, I think.
Right.
Because it's quantitative, it's unemotional, it might be hard to tackle, but the other thing is stress will come down once you start to get a handle of where all your money is, where it's going, and what it will look like at some point in the future. And if you can start to get a feel and a confidence around that, that's going to help. And it's amazing how many people don't have a handle around it. What credit cards are you paying 32% interest versus the one you're paying 12% interest?
Can you imagine how the organization would...
Now, let's say you work for an organization that you have a $3,000 bonus at the end of the year, or a $5,000, or a $1,000. You know, I'm amazed at how many people get bonuses, and then the same time next year they're in the same exact spot. What happens? They go spend it, right? Or they don't even save or do any productive use for that. When they get windfalls in cash, it just goes out the door. Now, you can't, as a business owner, get into their personal financial life. But you can try and help people with that basic process of, your life should move in a positive direction. Now, a lot of people are going to be thinking, yeah, I can't even make ends meet. And you want me to save money? So I'm not oversimplifying and making value judgments on people's pay and income versus their expenses. I'm just saying, do you know where you're at and where you can be 6 months from now? Based on current circumstances and if things change a little bit. Just knowing where you're at is important. And a lot of people don't even know that.
Yeah, and it's an objective analysis of what a person's personal financial situation is, positive or negative. Again, it's a critique without criticism. There's just you're being objective. There's nobody's being critical. I can see why somebody would feel that way, but if you're feeling that way, you're looking for an easy way out, and there is no easy way out.
The world doesn't get better by accident. Your personal financial situation, if you wish it to be better, that's probably better than not wishing it to be better. But knowing specifically where it's at, where the money's going, and then building a plan to make it a little bit better is a hell of a lot more productive.
Yeah, and then you're also faced with the with all that it's going to take to get yourself out of that hole and get yes. Once you write the plan is important. It's extremely important. The goal is extremely important. The issue is then you have to have the intestinal fortitude to make it all go work. And not everybody has that, okay? The woe is me attitude is, I think we all have that to a certain extent, and, but the folks that fight that woe is me attitude and fight it very quickly once it starts to come on and they start working on a plan with a goal in mind, that goes away. I can assure you that goes away. I mean, I've been there. I've absolutely been there. And the only thing that gets me out of that, damn it, why does this have to happen to me? I did this. Hey, shit happens. Deal with it. And the sooner you deal with it in an objective manner, break it down, set a goal, make the plan, life gets so much easier after that. Now, you have to execute the plan, okay?
But start by setting one.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.